Hello, this is Sara Sach with Posh Pooch Designs, and today's video I'm going to be showing you how to make this simple ladies tote. It's very easy to make. We start with the bottom at single crochet, we do granny square stitches and some double crochet stitches, and then we repeat till we get up here. We do some single crochet stitching, we make a handle, and that's it. Now this is a free pattern on my blog, and I'll put that blog link right down there in the notes underneath the video for you. Now the original pattern is written with worsted weight number 4 yarn, and you can certainly make it with worsted weight number 4 yarns. As you saw in the pictures before the video, I did lots of different styles, and I've given away and sold a lot of these through the years. This is an old pattern. I wrote it about 10, maybe 11 years ago. When Yarnspirations came out with their new Caron cotton cakes, I thought it would be a neat idea to retest the pattern and go back over it and add anything that might have been left out, and also to stitch it up in the Caron cakes. You can make the ladies' tote bag with just one of these Caron cotton cakes. It has 3.5 ounces on it, and after making this one here, this is the amount of yarn I had left. So it's the perfect size, and that leaves you a little bit if you want to add a flower or a butterfly or maybe a ruffle or anything for just a little bit of an applique or a little bit of extra something that you want to add on, because this pattern is really versatile. And again, those pictures at the beginning of the video, some of them have a flower, some have a butterfly, and I can't remember, but you can put a heart or whatever you want, or even just some big buttons to make it pretty, because remember, this is a ladies bag, and it's the perfect size bag to carry your yarn in, to carry your books to book club, maybe your Bible to church, or a notebook to school, or whatever. It's just a perfect size bag. And another thing is that it fits my iPad perfectly. This ladies tote bag measures about 9 inches in length and about 13 inches wide. And so it's a nice size tote bag. And what you're going to need to make this tote bag is 3.5 ounces of cotton or worsted weight number 4 yarn. And we're going to be using this one for our demonstration. It's got some lavender and some beige and cream in it. I thought it would make a beautiful tote bag. Now we're going to be stitching today with our J hook. And the J hook is, of course, a little bit bigger. It's a 6.0 millimeter hook. And we're using a little bit bigger hook because we want it to be a little bit more open, not tightly stitched. Usually with this yarn, you'd probably use an H, but we're going to be using a J. Like I said, it's a 6 millimeter J hook. You're also going to need a pair of scissors for clipping yarn at the end, and then of course a needle for weaving in those ends. All right, to get started, we're going to begin with a slip knot, and then we're going to chain 36 chains, and we are starting at the bottom of the bag. And one thing I do recommend is that if you are a tight crocheter, or maybe a tight chainer, that if you have the tendency to stitch this beginning chain tightly, you might want to loosen up a smidge or maybe go up a hook size just for the beginning chain. And that's because we're going to be stitching in both sides of the beginning chain to form the bottom of the bag. So I'm going to continue chaining till I have 36 chains. I've chained my 36 chains for the bottom of the bag. And now, there we go, we're going to turn, and in the second chain from the hook, we're going to stitch 2 single crochets. So this is your first chain from the hook. This is your second. To stitch a single crochet, we're going to go in that second chain, we're going to pull up a loop, we're going to yarn over and go through both of those loops. That's a single crochet. And we're going to be stitching the bottom of the bag in single crochets. We're going to stitch another single crochet in that same chain. So we're going to go in, pull up a loop, yarn over, and go through both. So there's 2 single crochets in that first chain. And now we're going to stitch 1 single crochet in each chain across until we reach the last chain. And in the last chain, we're going to stitch 2 single crochets as well. All right, let's go ahead and stitch 1 single crochet in each of the chains across until we reach that last single crochet. One single crochet in each chain across until we reach that last single crochet. And remember, we're going to place 2 single crochets in that last chain. I have stitched my single crochets all the way up my chain until I reached this last single crochet. And we're going to be stitching 2 single crochets in this last single crochet. All right, we're not going to chain 1, we're going to turn, and we're going to stitch down this opposite or other side of the chain. And we're going to repeat what we just did. So move that tail out of the way. And we're going to go right in that first chain and stitch 2 single crochets. And this makes a nice corner for our bag. And then we're going to stitch 1 single crochet all the way back down till we reach that last, there we go, till we reach that last chain where we stitch those first 2 single crochets. And then we'll stitch 2 single crochets in this last chain as well. And then I'll show you how to join. So what we're doing is we stitched 2 single crochets in this first chain where we stitched the 2 single crochets on this side. And now we're working down the opposite side of the chain. Sometimes it's called the other side. And we're stitching 1 single crochet in each of those chains, and you'll see it lines up nicely. And this is going to form a nice sturdy bottom of our bag. We'll do this all the way down, and when we get back to this last chain, we'll put 2 single crochets in that last chain. I stitched my single crochets back up the opposite side of the chain. And now I'm back to the last chain, and I'm going to stitch 2 single crochets in that same stitch or chain that we stitched in on the previous row. And then I'm going to join to that first single crochet. And we're going to put our hook through that first single crochet, yarn over and pull it in through. You'll have 2 loops on your hook, and you'll pull that loop through the loop on your hook. And then we'll just chain 1. And this chain 1 does not count as a single crochet or a stitch. Now, what we're going to do next is we're not going to be adding any more single crochets to this. Basically, for the next 3 rows, we're going to place 1 single crochet in each single crochet around and join. So we'll go right in that first single crochet and stitch a single crochet, and we'll do this all the way around. And this is going to form, like I said, the bottom of the bag, and it's going to shape it on the sides, and you'll see as we go that it will start moving up the sides of the bag, and we won't have to do any more shaping. It'll just do it all by itself as we stitch. So we're going to stitch 1 single crochet in each single crochet around until we get back around to this first single crochet here where we started this next row. So 1 single crochet all the way around, moving right around the edge, and then moving right back up all the way around to join to this first single crochet. So 1 single crochet in each single crochet around, and then we'll join and chain 1. I have single crocheted all the way around and back up, and I want to show you the corner here, or the end. That's our extra piece where we started, and this is how your corner is going to look. It's going to start to curl up, although that's going to be the outside. Well, you'll notice that it sort of gently curls up, and it will do the same thing on this end because we stitched all the way around, going around the curve of this corner and then all the way back up in single crochets. So now I did the last single crochet, and I'm going to join to that first single crochet with a slip stitch. So I'm pulling a loop through and putting that loop through the one on my hook and chain 1. So there's our second row. All right, and now for the next 2 rows we're going to repeat what we just did. 1 single crochet in each stitch all the way around, join to the first single crochet and chain 1. And like I said previously, this is going to give us a nice sturdy bottom to our bag. That way, if we put a heavy book in there, or maybe we took it to the farmer's market and we've got a cantaloupe in there, it's not going to bust out the bottom of the bag. Although my bag carries my iPad most of the time, and I don't want that falling out, of course. So 1 single crochet in each single crochet all the way around. So we get back over here and join to that first single crochet, and we're going to do this for 2 rows. This is how the bottom of your bag should look after row 4. We did the stitching on both sides of the chain, and then we have 4 rows of single crochet. Like I said, it makes a nice sturdy bottom for our bag. Now we're going to begin the shell stitch rows. So instead of chaining 1, we're going to chain 3. So I've already chained 1, so I'm going to chain 2 more. And then we're going to stitch 2 more double crochets in that same stitch as our chain 3, because the chain 3 counts as our first double crochet of our shell stitch. So to stitch a double crochet, we yarn over our hook, go in that same stitch, pull up a loop. There'll be those 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, go through the first 2, yarn over, and go through the second 2. That is a double crochet. And for our shell stitch, we're stitching 3 double crochets in the same stitch. Now, the chain 3 counted as our first one here, so we stitch 2 more double crochets so that we have 3 double crochets in the same stitch. We're going to skip the next 2 single crochets, 1, 2, and stitch 3 double crochets in the next stitch. We do not chain 1 or anything in between our shell stitches. This is the way this round or this row will work. We'll skip the next 2 single crochets and stitch 3 single crochets in the next stitch for our shell stitch. Whoops, do that one again and kind of got caught. There we go. A lot of times when you're doing a row of shell stitches, they'll have you chain 1 or 2 in between. On this pattern, we're not doing that. All we're doing is skipping the next 2 single crochets and stitching a shell stitch of 3 double crochets in each together. Skip the next 2 and stitch a shell stitch of 3 double crochets together. And we'll do this all the way around, working all the way around the bag until we get back over here, and then I'll show you how to join. This is how your cluster row or shell row should look. And you should have a total of 24 shell stitches or 24 clusters of 3 double crochet. Now, something that happens sometimes, and it's easy to get your counts off when you're joining your single crochet rows, and occasionally instead of these 2 single crochets on between the last 2, I'll have 3. If that happens, go ahead and just skip them because it's going to work out. As long as you have 24 clusters, that's what's important. Like I said, occasionally I'll have that extra stitch in there, and sometimes I'll only have 1 instead of the 2. It just happens when you're joining your single crochet rows and chaining 1. Sometimes you accidentally add or subtract a single crochet stitch. So don't let that panic you. If you counted and did everything right, you should have 2 single crochets at the end, and then we'll join to the top of our chain 3. Get in there. Okay, and then to do the next row, we joined. We're going to make a little chain 1 there just to keep it snug. Then we're going to slip stitch in the top of the next 2 double crochets of that first cluster stitch, and then we'll single crochet in the space between those next 2 cluster or shell stitches and chain 3. There we go. And by doing this, it keeps us from turning back and forth on our bag so that we can just go forward. So we joined here with a slip stitch. Then we slip stitched in the top of the next 2 double crochets of this shell stitch. Then we slip stitched in that first space between the next 2 shell stitches, and we chained 3. And the reason we chained 3 is we're going to do another row of shell stitches, and we're going to be using this space between the shell stitches to stitch the shell stitches. So the chain 3 counted as our first double crochet, and we're going to double crochet 2 more times in that same space. And again, we're not going to chain 1 or 2 or anything between our shell stitches. We're just going to place 3 double crochets or 1 cluster or 1 shell stitch, whatever you want to call it, in each of these little spaces between all the shell stitches. So we'll go to that next space and we'll stitch 3 double crochets. And we'll do that in the next space. And see how that looks? We've got our row of shell stitches, and then we're stitching another row using those spaces in between to stitch our shell stitches. We will do this all the way around this row, and then we'll join to the top of this chain 3, and then we'll actually repeat ourselves because we're going to have 3 rows of shell stitches before we start stitching our double crochets. So let's go ahead and complete this row of 3 double crochets in each of the spaces between our shell stitches all the way around, and then join to the top of our chain 3. This is how the next row should look with those shell stitches in between the shell stitches. So I finished that last shell stitch. I'm going to join to the top of the chain 3 with a slip stitch, and we're going to do exactly like we did on the previous row. We're going to slip stitch into the top of those next 2 double crochets, and then we're going to slip stitch in that next space between the next 2 shells and chain 3. And then we're going to repeat what we just did on this row, and we're going to stitch 2 double crochets in the same space because our chain 3 counted as our first double crochet of our shell stitch. And then we're going to continue like we did on the last row. 3 double crochets for our shell stitch in each of the spaces between the shell stitches. And this is going to give us 3 rows of shell stitches. We're going to have 3 rows, and then we're going to stitch some double crochet rows after that. So we'll go ahead and finish this row of shell stitches, and then we'll join just like we did previously, but don't do the slip stitching to the next space. We're just going to join and chain 3 after this row. This is how our tote should look. We've done those 4 rows of single crochet, and now we have 3 rows of shells. For row 8, all we're going to do is stitch 1 double crochet in each of the stitches around. I went ahead and joined with a slip stitch on my last row, and now I'm going to chain 3, and that's because we're doing a row of double crochets. Alright, so we're going to put 1 double crochet in each of the stitches all the way around. Of course, our chain 3 here is in the same stitch as our chain 3, so we're going to go to the next stitch, which is a double crochet, and stitch a double crochet. Now, don't place any stitches in the spaces between. We're only stitching in the top of those 3 double crochets all the way around this row. So our chain 3 is in our chain 3, and then we're just stitching 1 double crochet in each double crochet, not stitching in the space between the shells, just stitching in the double crochets themselves. And we'll do this all the way around till we get back here, and then we'll join to the top of that chain 3. So I have a lot of double crochets to make. I better get busy. This is the way that your tote should look after row 8. We did 1 row of double crochets, only stitching in the double crochets of the clusters, not putting any stitches in the spaces between. And now for the next 2 rows, we're going to stitch exactly the same. We joined to the top of the chain 3 and we chained 3. So now we're just going to place 1 double crochet in each of the double crochets that we stitched on the previous row. And we're going to do this for 2 rows. 1 double crochet in each double crochet around, then we'll join to the top of the chain 3 and repeat that. Now I'm going to go ahead and stitch the double crochet rows. Since it's all the same, just a double crochet in each double crochet. And I'm going to go ahead and do that for 2 more rows. Now, if you're working with me on this video, you can pause this video here until you finish those 3 rows of double crochet, and then you can start the video again. This is how your tote bag should look for your first 10 rows. We've got the 4 rows of single crochet, 3 rows of our shell or cluster stitches, and then 3 rows of double crochet. Now for the next 3 rows, we're going to be repeating the shell stitches, and then after that we'll repeat the 3 rows of double crochet like we did on this one. Now, I'm not going to go back through all of it and show you the shell stitches again or the double crochet stitches again. What you need to do is just repeat these 3 rows and these 3 rows. And then if you want to make your bag longer, you can continue to be repeating those until it's the length that you want. For the written pattern though, after this last double crochet row here, which is your 10th row, you're going to do 3 rows of shell stitches and 3 rows of double crochets again. I'm going to be skipping ahead to where the next 3 rows of shells and 3 rows of double crochet are already done. And like I said, if you're working along with me, you may want to pause the video here and then pick back up after you've finished these next rows. Just to repeat, I'm going to go ahead and work 3 more rows of shell stitches and 3 more rows of double crochet. This is how your tote should look after row 16. We repeated the 3 rows of shell stitches, and then we repeated the 3 rows of double crochet. Now something that happens because of the way we slip stitch in the top of our shell to get to that next space is that you'll notice that the side is off. And we're getting ready to do the handle portion. We're going to single crochet and then we're going to do the handle portion. And before we do that, we want to slip stitch back 4 stitches or as many as needed to get you back to this corner, because we want the handles to sit nice and neat. Here we go. So what we're going to do is we're just going to slip stitch backwards. So we're going to move our yarn to the other way, and we're just going to go on the top of those stitches and make some slip stitches. And I'm going to do 4. I usually have to do 3 or 4 depending on how it ends up, because we're going to be stitching single crochet rows and then handles. Let me go ahead and chain 1 there. You can see I slip stitched back 4 stitches, and that gets me back to my corner. And then we're going to do a couple of rows of single crochet and then do our handles. If we didn't get back to this corner, our handles wouldn't be even. All right. So now for rows 17, 18, 19, and 20, which are 4 rows, we're going to place 1 single crochet in each single crochet around join, and chain 1. Now, these 4 where we did our slip stitches, they can seem a little tricky, but don't let them trick you up. You're just going to go right back in that slip stitch that we just stitched and stitch a single crochet right over it. And it was important to do that because we want our handles to be even when we get to that point. Alright, so let's go ahead and single crochet in each single crochet around, working all the way around our bag, and then we'll join to that first single crochet and chain 1. So just to repeat, 1 single crochet in each of the double crochets around, and then we'll join to the top of that first single crochet and chain 1. I single crocheted in each of the double crochets all the way around, and then I joined to the first single crochet and chained 1. And you can see now where I'm starting is nice and neatly placed in this corner. Now we're going to do 3 more rows of single crochet before we put the handle on, like this one. We're going to have 4 rows of single crochet, and then we'll put the handle on. So let's go ahead and keep stitching. Single crochet rows. We've done 1, we're going to chain 1, and then place 1 single crochet in each stitch around, and we'll do this for 3 more rows for a total of 4 rows of single crochet. Now I'm going to go ahead and stitch my 4 rows. Like I've stated before, you can pause the video at this point, stitch your 4 rows of single crochet, and then begin the video again, because I'm going to go ahead and stitch my 4 rows. I think you know how to do a single crochet and how to do the join by now because we've done them together. So let's go ahead and stitch those last 3 rows of single crochet, and then we can get those handles on. So this is how the top of this should look after those 4 rows of single crochet. And this gives us a nice base to work our handles in like this. So what we're going to do is we joined and chained 1, and then we're going to place 1 single crochet in the first 12 single crochets. There's 10, 11, and 12. All right, so we put 1 single crochet in the first 12 single crochets. Now we're going to chain 25 because this is going to be our handle. There's 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, you can kind of place it here and see how big that handle is going to be. If you want the handle bigger, then chain more. If you want the handle smaller, then you can chain less. Okay, so we did our 12 single crochets, and then we chained 25. Now we're going to skip the next 14 single crochets in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So we're going to skip the next 14 single crochets, and then we're going to single crochet in the next stitch. Okay, I'm going to turn my bag a little bit. And then we're going to single crochet in the next 23 single crochets, so that we'll have 24 altogether, counting that one we just made. We're going to single crochet in the next 23 single crochets because we joined here, and that counts as one as well. So we are going to have 24 single crochets. Then you'll need to chain the 25 again for the handle. And then we'll skip the 14 stitches again and join to the next stitch and single crochet the rest of the way around to here and join. So I'm going to join to that next stitch and single crochet the rest of the way back around the top of the bag. There we go. One more it looks like. And then I'm going to join to that first single crochet and chain one. Now at this point you need to take a look at your bag, make sure that your handles line up and that everything is even, because if not, your handles won't be lined up. And if they're not even, you may need to do some adjusting. You know, maybe your count got off a little bit and you need to add or subtract some single crochets in order to get your handles even. Alright, so once you're happy and satisfied that your handles are even, then we're just going to single crochet in each single crochet across and in each chain of the handle. So we're single crocheting across the top. There we go. And now we come to the handle, so we're going to place a single crochet in each of the chains of the handle. There we go. So we'll single crochet across the top of the bag, we'll single crochet across the handles, and then we'll single crochet around the side across this handle and then back around, and then we'll join to that first single crochet with a chain one. So this is how the handles and the top of your tote should look at this point. Now I decided to go with a little bit shorter handle. I took it out and only chained 20, so the handle on this one would be just a little bit shorter because the weight of my iPad kind of pulls on the handle a little bit, and so I decided to go with just a little bit shorter handle. And all you do is the pattern calls to chain 25, and so I only chained 20, so the handle's just a wee bit shorter. That's a great thing about this type of pattern. You can change it as needed. Okay, so now this next row, all we're going to do is do another row of single crochet all the way around the top of the bag and the handle. Now I'm just going to do one more row of single crochet, but if you want a more substantial handle, maybe you're going to put something heavy in there, like a couple of library books, then you may want to put more rows on to make that handle a little bit more sturdy. So all I'm going to do, turn it over here, is just stitch one more row of single crochet all the way around the handle and the top of the bag, and then my bag will be all finished and ready to use. So one single crochet in each single crochet all the way around, and then join to the top of that first single crochet, and then I can tie off and weave in my ends. I have completed that second row of single crochet, and I'm happy with the thickness. Now if you want your bag handle to be thicker, go ahead and stitch as many rows of single crochet as you would like. I'm going to go ahead and cut my yarn and then I'll tie that off and weave that in. Just use my needle and weave that in to the inside. Now, once you've got this all weaved in, you can add any kind of embellishment that you like. And I know I called this a lady's tote, but this could easily be a tote for a young man as well, to carry his school books in, or maybe camera equipment, or just different things. It's a great tote for lots of different things. So this is my, what I call, my lady's tote bag. There's the purple one, and here's the teal one. And these are great size tote bags to tote just about anything where you don't need a great big bag for.